Hello everyone, I'm Stockton Helbing and I'm here to talk to you about the 2026-2027 Texas All-State Jazz Drum Set Etude that I wrote for this year, which is entitled The Kid from Valley Oaks. Those of you who have joined me before for these etude studies, you know the deal, but just in case you're new, here's how this is going to work. I'll play through it once and let you watch me play it, and then I'll break down the etude, talk about the overarching ideas that are contained within it, and at the end of this video, I'll give you a couple alternate takes of me playing through the etude so you can hear some of the possibilities. So without further ado, let's get to the first playthrough and let you hear it. Here we go. The Kid from Valley Oaks is actually a play on words a little bit. This is based on a Neil Hefti composition, which he wrote for the great Count Basie Orchestra. And there's a song on Count Basie's album which is entitled The Atomic Mr. Basie. It's the opening track, and the name of it is The Kid from Red Bank. See, Count Basie was from Red Bank, New Jersey, and this song was written about the place that he grew up. Little fun fact is that Count Basie wanted to be a drummer when he was a kid growing up in Red Bank, New Jersey. But then he crossed paths with the best drummer in town, which was a gentleman named Sonny Greer. Sonny Greer was such a great drummer. When Basie heard him, he realized, I'm just going to stick to the piano. And if you recognize that name, Sonny Greer went on to be the first and very important drummer in the great Duke Ellington's orchestra. Anyway, The Kid from Valley Oaks is just me using the title without using the title. Valley Oaks is actually the street I live on here in Dallas, Texas. So I hope you like the play on words. The topic and the figure that we're centering on drumistically this year is this gentleman right here, the great Sonny Payne. Percival Payne was his real name, Sonny was his nickname, and Sonny Payne actually got the job with Count Basie's orchestra in a bit of a funny way. You see, Count Basie's band was famous for playing at a jazz club in New York City during the holidays every year, around Christmas time, and it is a jazz club called Birdland. It's the original location that Basie used to play at, and they would do a residency around the holidays. Well, one year, they were doing their residency, and their great Kansas City drummer, Gus Johnson, got sick. He got appendicitis. He had to go in the hospital and have an appendectomy, and he was not going to make some of these really important Birdland concerts that year, and somebody recommended Sonny Payne. And of course, Sonny Payne came in and sounded great, and unfortunately, Basie said that Sonny sounded so great that he had to let Gus Johnson go, and it had nothing to do with how great and swinging Gus played. It was just that Sonny Payne was so exciting, Basie just couldn't let him go. And that's the key word that I think about when I think about the big band drumming style of the great Sonny Payne: excitement. I always call him the firecracker. When something is going to happen musically, he pops off, firecracker going off, causing everyone to pay attention, almost in a shocking way at times, whether it's getting ready to get loud or getting ready to get soft. Sonny Payne likes to play some nice, aggressive content to have everyone pay attention to the change that's getting ready to occur. And he makes it sound so easy, as all the masters do. So the most important thing I could say, more important than anything coming out of my mouth in this video or anything that is coming out of my sticks on the drum set in my videos, is the greatest thing you can do is listen to the masters, and Sonny Payne is definitely one of them. And if we want to capture the playing style of one of these masters, it's going to take deep, thoughtful, attentive, repetitive listenings to the significant albums that they played on. And that Count Basie album is a great place to start. You can hear many great Count Basie orchestra recordings with Sonny Payne. I recommend finding one that jumps out at you and listening to that album over and over and over. It's, in my opinion, it's better to listen to one album 100 times than 100 albums one time. If we're trying to learn something dramistically from them, it's going to take time. So I hope you'll listen to Sonny Payne. It's one of the many reasons why I love having pictures of my heroes on my studio wall, to just constantly remind me to go check them out so that I can be inspired by their great playing, and so that I can try to maybe one day when I grow up be as good as them. Okay, let's get into some of the details of this etude. Right off the bat, you see that it calls for hi-hat time a la Sonny Payne, or in the style of Sonny Payne. That means we're going to be playing time on that hi-hat while we express these figures in the first 4 bars, and we have some crescendos happening, so we have a lot right off the bat. And then don't miss these articulations, these marcatos. They sometimes are called rooftops as a slang. You'll see that they appear over quite a few quarter notes. That is telling the drummer the way that the horn players, the wind players in the ensemble, are going to interpret those quarter notes. The marcato tells us that they are going to play those as fat shorts, dot, 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 dot. I like to use the snare for those articulations. You will hear Sonny Payne on many Basie recordings uses his snare for short hits with the ensemble, and you will hear me doing that on the video demonstration. The other articulation marking that might look a little bit unique to you, maybe you've never seen it, would be in the 4th measure of the piece. We have a line, a horizontal line above beat 1. That is a tenuto marking, which means sustained full value. That's significant to us drummers because that tells us that the horn players will give that a long legato interpretation. So bar 4 on 1 and 2, they're going to go do dot, 1, 2, long, short. I like to put my bass drum on those longs because it sounds great. And then we have these 8th notes on beats 3 and 4 of the 4th bar that end with a tied 8th note to a whole note, so that's definitely going to be long. And you will hear that I like to play a fill during bar 5 leading into bar 6 while the band is sustaining. You will hear Sonny Payne do that on many recordings, and that's a great way to help build excitement, especially because we had such a fun crescendo in the first 4 bars where we went from a mezzo piano to a fortissimo. It helps really drive that energy. And then on the and of 4, dot, and of 4 in measure 6, short, and we're going to get really soft pianissimo after that. And that's going to be drastic. And as Ed Soph used to love to grill us North Texas drummers about, he said, you make your louds louder by making your softs softer. And what that means is you don't want to always hit as hard as you can, but you want to control your dynamics and stretch your dynamic range. So if you put your fortissimo pretty high and you put your in volume, that really stretches the possibilities of the dynamics. So you want to experiment with that. And then when you get to that pianissimo, you want to stay there. And you will see that often on the playing examples that I'm providing for you, I like to go on that closed hi-hat in a Sonny Payne style with my foot closed very firmly, tip of the stick right in the top middle of the hi-hat to get that great staccato articulation. And then we repeat it again, since letter A happens twice. And I think one of the fun challenges here, which matches the challenges that you'll hear Sonny Payne do in The Kid from Red Bank with Count Basie, is to play these figures in a very similar way the first time through and the second time through to help build that familiarity and thereby that excitement. So letter A has some really interesting challenges right off the bat. Feel free just to loop that over and over, just letter A, that 12-bar phrase, until you feel really confident with how to handle those passages. When we get to letter B, it says tenor saxophone solo, backgrounds, second, X only. X is an abbreviation that we often see in big band charts that means second time only. That means all of those background figures that you're seeing appear above the slashes will only be played the second time. So the first time you will not play them. The first time through you will simply comp. We also can make the assumption, looking at letter A and letter B, which are 12 measure long phrases, that we're playing a 12-bar blues here. Basie was a great blues band coming out of Kansas City. They did wonderful things with the 12-bar blues, fast, slow, and everywhere in between. You know, the blues are like chocolate chip cookies. They're all delicious and you can never have too many. And Basie played some great blues. Well, on this passage, you're going to do some blues comping for the first time through. And then the second time through, you still can comp, but you then want to play these background figures and set them up as you are able. One of the things you'll notice here at letter B is that we have slashes in the center of the staves with figures appearing above them. The slashes always tell us to continue to play time in an appropriate style. And that style is almost always at the upper left-hand corner of the chart, so if my eyes travel up there, it says Basie swing. It says a man, which means a band, and means 80 years of beautiful music. So that means that you have a lot of freedom here to play ideas that you come up with around setting up and executing these figures. So have fun trying different approaches and seeing what you like. You will notice that often I like to play letter B on one of my smaller ride cymbals, either my left side ride cymbal or my far right ride cymbal. Not my main ride cymbal, which is to my right, because I'm a right-handed player. My right side cymbal is usually my primary ride cymbal. I like to use it for the loudest moments. Typically in my setups, my left side cymbal is lighter than my right side, and if I have a far right cymbal, it's even lighter than my left. So knowing your cymbals means you know your tools, and if you understand your tools, you'll know how to do a good job. The size of the cymbal usually affects its volume and timbre, and usually the smaller the cymbal and the lighter the gram weight, the lighter in volume, or at least the easier it is to play on that cymbal in a light volume manner. So get to know your cymbals. Don't just stay on one cymbal the whole time. Your switching of cymbals for different portions of a chart is a great way to add beautiful textures and timbres that help differentiate the piece and help hold the listener's interest. So use your cymbals appropriately throughout. At the end of letter B, you'll see there's a marking underneath measures 23 and 24. It says second XO, and we learned earlier that X always stands for time. So that O stands for only, second time only. So that crescendo in measures 23 and 24 will only be played your second time through letter B, leading into the drum solo at letter C. So keep in mind that's where it will grow, and make sure that you do that. Now we're looking at letter C. This is a very tricky passage. We have drum solo around hits given to us at letter C. That means we're going to play the band's figures while playing interesting content around it. One of the easy pitfalls in sections like this is to get so focused on our drum solos that we forget to be a good shepherd of the flock. When we have figures that are in the middle of the measure, those are usually what we call tutti, T-U-T-T-I, or ensemble figures. That tells us, the drummer, that everyone in the ensemble is playing that. The bass player will not be walking, the pianist and guitarist will not be comping. Everybody's playing that unison figure. That means we do not usually want to play time. Our hand will not be on that ride cymbal playing an ostinato throughout. We want to play the band's figures and then in between play some solo content. But keep in mind, we want to still set up and foreshadow the band. I like to think about this idea that I call primary rhythmic setup. And it is simply really being considerate of what I'm playing on the downbeat before the band enters on a figure. I'll give you an example. In measure 28, I see that the band is coming in on beat 2, and they're coming in with a quarter note with a marcato articulation. As we learned in letter A, that marcato articulation is telling me that the band's going to be short. So I can make the determination, I'm going to play snare there. So the primary rhythmic setup for me is the quarter note or beat before that. That's going to be on beat 1 of 28. And what I have found over my years of playing big band and listening to big band drumming masters is that on that primary rhythmic setup, putting the opposite sound source than what I'm going to use for the band's entrance is a great way of helping them find where to come in. a great way of foreshadowing or setting them up. That means in measure 28, a bass drum on beat 1 is going to be a great way of setting up that snare that I'm going to play on beat 2. So you can see that it is a bit of a reverse engineering approach. I look at what the band's playing, I make sure that I know their rhythm, then I make sure that I know their articulation and note length. Then I can draw some conclusions about how I would like to orchestrate them on my drums and cymbals. Then I can think about the setup. One thing that I try to stay away from, and I learned this the hard way, is I do not like to put figures of the band, whether they be 2D figures or background figures, on my toms. I love using my toms for fills and setups, but I do not put figures on the toms. At least I try not to. It's very rare that I will do that. And it's for one really simple reason. I learned from playing on some recording sessions that if I played a tom with the band, it often sounded like a wrong note. And I was very embarrassed years ago when I was on a big band recording session, and I was the producer as well. And I was in the control room with the engineer listening to playback after we had done a take with the full band. And I heard something that sounded very strange on one figure with the band. So we stopped and we did what's called soloing each section, which means you mute all instruments except each section, because something sounded wrong, and I thought there was a wrong note in one of the sections. So we soloed the trumpets, and I listened to it. No, the trumpets sounded great. Okay, soloed the trombones. No, they sounded great. Soloed the saxophones. They sounded great too. And I was like, well, what are we hearing? So then I was like, well, let's check the bass part. Soloed the bass, sounded great. Solo guitar, piano, sounded great. It left only one thing, me. So I listened to what I was playing, and I was striking a rack tom with the band on one of their figures, and it actually sounded like a wrong note within the horn section. That was a really humbling experience where I realized I need to be very careful about how I'm orchestrating band figures. And as an aside, I think the same way when I'm playing other types of music. I love playing big band music. I think about this when I'm playing small group music, or I'm on a session playing pop music, rock music, funk music. If I'm playing a musical, if I'm playing with an orchestra or with a choir. In general, I have learned that I do not like the sound of toms with band figures. But as LeVar Burton taught me as a little boy when I would watch Reading Rainbow, he would always say, but you don't have to take my word for it. If you don't take my word for it, experiment and see what you like. And even more importantly, go check out great drumming masters like Sonny Payne, right there, and see if you notice him putting figures on toms. You will not hear it happen very often. Okay, so I would go through all of this section at letter C and just make sure you're comfortable with how you're going to handle the band's figures and the primary rhythmic setup. Then you can start plugging in ideas, solo ideas throughout. Now, there is a little bit of a surprising challenge towards the end. At 33, 34, 35, we see some dynamics, like measure 34 says mezzo piano. But you'll notice there's no indication of decrescendo, or if it's subito, which means suddenly. Sometimes you'll see subito mezzo piano. That means you would see the word SUB with a period before MP for mezzo piano. Subito means suddenly. Sometimes Sonny Payne will do sudden shifts or decrescendos. What's important to remember at measure 33 into 34 is you have a freedom of choice. Do you want a decrescendo or go subito mezzo piano at 34, and then the same thing going into the pianissimo marking at 35? That's part of the fun. See what works best for you and what you like. Then we see for certain in measures 36 and 37, we have a gradual crescendo from pianissimo all the way to fortissimo going into the shout chorus at letter D. So that's going to be quite aggressive. And just remember, make your dynamics excitingly diverse and overt. So exaggerate them. So make sure that your mezzo piano is getting softer and that your pianissimo is very soft, so that when you get to fortissimo, it's really exciting. Okay? That is a nasty little passage, letter C. And I say that because I still find passages like this challenging. I still have so much fun trying to figure out how my heroes sounded so good on ideas like this. So go find some great recordings of Sonny Payne soloing around hits. Take your time and experiment. I will say one final thing that you can do when practicing letter C is break it down into each of its phrases. You could practice measures 24 through 28, just loop that. Build some confidence with your concepts of playing there. Do the same thing with measures 29 through 32, and then the same thing with 33 through 37, and then put it together. Sometimes when we try to play an entire passage and it's giving us trouble, it's almost as if we're biting off more than we're ready to chew. So cut it up into smaller pieces and build on success. Never try to build on confusion. That will only leave you feeling frustrated, and trust me, I made that mistake many times. I'm a slow learner, so I hope you'll learn from my mistakes and take your time and have fun with that passage. Now we're looking at letter D, the shout chorus. A shout chorus in a big band chart usually happens only once, and it is the peak or pinnacle of the music. It's the most exciting part. It's almost always very loud. And Sonny Payne playing shout choruses with Count Basie's orchestra, to me, is some of the greatest music and greatest drumming to ever listen to. I never get tired of hearing him do things like that. We'll see that at the shout chorus at letter D, we have some figures that are occurring. So again, you want to go through them. You want to really consider what's happening with the ensemble's note length, longs and shorts. Think about how you want to orchestrate them. And then think about if you have time to set things up or not. And then you'll see that at the end of the first two 4-bar phrases, so at measure 41 and measure 45, it says solo fill. The first thing that I always tell myself is do not let the word solo or solo fill or anything like that pull me off sides. Make sure that I'm keeping my ears focused on serving the band. I really believe that playing the drum set is a role of servitude. I am here to serve the band. I want to help them. I want to aid them. I want to make them feel comfortable. The more comfortable I make the band feel, the more exciting they will sound, and thereby the better the drummer people will think I am. So during these solo fill measures, there's very little time. And I say that because as I look at measure 41, I can see that with that trail down note, which is a glissando note, on the end of the and of 4 in measure 40, they're going to be falling. That's where they can go 1 dot do dot dow. You'll hear bands do falls, bow. So even though that's an 8th note that's untied, the fall to me is going to be a longer sound. So I'll probably hit a bass drum and crash there. Whenever I crash or comp or do anything as far as a jazz idea that ends on the and of 4, I don't like to play the downbeat of 1 immediately after it. To me, it ruins the coolness, it ruins the musical effect of that and of 4 syncopation. And jazz loves the and of 4. So I don't like to play immediately after that. I like to enjoy that and of 4. So now all of a sudden, in measure 41, I am more than likely not going to play very much on beat 1. That gives me beats 2 and beats 3 to think about a solo idea, and in beat 4, I'm going to start thinking about setting the band up for their entrance on the and of 1 in bar 42. So you can see that this one measure solo fill really quickly becomes a smaller amount of time when I start taking into consideration what happens before it and after it. Everything in music to me is a situational consideration. What is happening in this moment? When I'm reading a chart, that has some helpful ideas in it, in that I'm looking at information. But if I'm playing with a small group, I'm still considering what's happening in the moment. I know I learned through touring often with the big bands of Maynard Ferguson and Doc Severinsen. Often every night, the venue, the room we were playing in, would sound quite a bit different. And sometimes I needed to play differently in that room so that the band could hear me. So just taking into consideration everything all the time is a great way to always stay excited and fresh in your perspectives and approaches to playing this music. So you're going to want to be careful in that one measure solo fill. It's a little bit of a bear trap, so don't step your foot right in there. Make sure that time is still solid and that the energy stays exciting. And then it has a bit of a deceptive ending. When we look at the end of measure 47, we're going into the outro. And so really this 12-bar blues phrase has been shortened by 2 bars there. And now in letter E, we have a longer solo fill. But you can see letter E measures 48 until measures 55. We have 2-bar solo ideas that's getting softer every time with band hits on 4 and. That's a little bit tricky. So you're going to want to be really careful there, and then you want to make decisions as we spoke of earlier. Do you want each of your solos to gradually decrescendo, Or do you want to have subito dynamics? Or sometimes people call that, Ed Sof called it the Count Basie terraced dynamics. You go from one level to another really quickly. And Basie's music likes to do that. Years ago, I was saying that to a student, and I said, you know, you want to watch out for the Count Basie terraced dynamics. And he said to me, Professor, are you calling these terrorist dynamics? And I was like, what? No, terrorist. And he goes, oh, I was very confused. So shout out to Jacob who said that to me. So yeah, it's not terrorist dynamics, terrorist dynamics. So you have a lot of freedom there to watch out for how you want to foreshadow the band on each of those stair-stepping down dynamic passages. Then if you look at measure 56 and 57, that ought to look familiar. It looks just like the beginning of the piece in many ways. We have that dot, 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 do, dot. We have mezzo piano start and we crescendo. So that's going to feel very similar to how we handled the beginning of the piece in measures 1 through 4. And that's something that I always am looking for, musical symmetry in the way I play. When I see an idea at the end of a piece, I like to try to interpret it similarly to how I had played it for the band earlier, because to me that helps make my drumming sound more musically related to the piece. I don't ever want to sound random in the way I play. I love looking for, or at least aspiring towards, playing things that are very musically interesting and pleasing. I've always desired, first and foremost, to be a good musician and a drummer second. And when I hear my heroes on other instruments, when I hear the greats, you know, Louis Armstrong, Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, Clifford Brown, Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Sonny Rollins. Wow, Sonny Rollins is a great example. They're always bringing up ideas from the song itself and cleverly reusing them. And it's almost like when you're hanging out with friends and you'll quote a movie that you both like and you both appreciate the humor in it. I think that creatively when we're improvising, it's always fun to bring symmetry and similarities into what we're doing. So you have that opportunity at measures 56 and 57. Now you'll notice 58 and 59 are blank, and then we have a sudden shift of dynamics of piano on the last note with a fermata. This is a classic way that Count Basie's music would end. Often you'll hear the count play 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 3, 1, and Bob. Sometimes if you go to a Count Basie orchestra concert, even today, you'll hear them play something like that and everyone in the crowd will go 1, Count Basie. And that's what's probably going to be happening in that chart. We don't know for certain, but that's why I wrote it in there. And so you could play a fill in there if you want. You might want to play lightly, but then you would want to play a foreshadowing concept on beat 4 of 59 to make sure we're setting up that softer dynamic. So you'll definitely hear that again on Count Basie's music, and you can listen for that. And what's interesting is Duke Ellington would do that too. And what I've been curious about, I've heard Duke do that on some songs quite early. And Basie loved Duke. Actually, Count Basie got his very first touring job from Duke Ellington, who he met via his friend Sonny Greer from Red Bank, New Jersey. So, I mean, Duke Ellington is such an amazing innovator and creator of so many things in this music. It makes me very curious if that came from Duke or not. Maybe if you know, please drop it in the comments. I'd love to know. I'm always trying to learn. So that brings us all the way through the chart. So I just want to say a couple things in closing. Don't forget to have fun with this. Jazz music is all about having fun being yourself. Yes, Sonny Payne is amazing. I love him. I love all of these wonderful master drummers, and I listen to them and I study them, not because it steals my unique individuality at the instrument, but rather enriches it. So as you study Sonny Payne and as you study these other masters, do not ever fear that you're losing your own individuality. You are the only you, and that's the best part about you. But as you add rich, excellent artistic influences to your playing, you will sound more and more unique. And so as you go through this, I do want you, and I hope that you'll have fun studying Sonny Payne, but have fun being yourself. Try different things, have fun improvising. Yes, we're improvising here. It's a big band chart, but there's tons and tons of room for you to improvise. I often think about playing big band charts as doing a Mad Libs. I don't know if you know what that is, but they're usually these little stories that have blanks in the stories, and you ask someone else to randomly give you words, and then you plug them into the blanks, and you read it and it sounds funny. You know, like it'll say, give me a noun. And if you'll come up with the first noun you think of, like, I don't know, ride cymbal. And then the person will read the story and it'll say like, little Bobby was on his way to school carrying the fill in the blank ride cymbal that his mother had packed for him to eat for lunch. You know, something like that. It doesn't make sense. And I think sometimes big band drumming can be that way. We actually fill in these blanks, these improvisational blanks, these setups and short solo fills. We fill them by mistake with things that sound a bit silly and hilarious in context. Sometimes humor can be fun in big band drumming. Sonny Payne is quite a firecracker, funny player at times, but a dead serious, hardcore swinger at times too. So it's all about figuring out the type of player you want to be. And maybe that just is the way you're feeling that day, or the way the band's sounding. I remember sometimes when we would be playing a lot of what we would call one-nighters, both in Maynard Ferguson's band and Doc Severinson's band. That means you're playing a night, couple nights consecutively in different cities. I would feel that after 2 or 3 nights in a row, the band would start just being tired because we're traveling and fatigued. And I would sometimes mix up the way I played. Not that it was always perfect by any means, but I would try to play different things to hopefully excite the band and energize the band and remind them, hey, I'm here trying to help you, but I need you to pay attention to me too, in a way to help them, I hope. Although some of them might disagree. I don't know. I hope that I'd help them. I tried. I wanted it to help. But, you know, have fun experimenting. Don't try to play the piece every single day the exact same way. This is still jazz. You're still improvising. Enjoy improvising. That's the most special thing about jazz music in any situation where you're playing it, is that the key ingredient and the unique aspect of jazz music is the massive quantity of improvisation that's included. And you have a lot of that in this etude. And so I hope you'll have fun with that. And for me, the most important thing about this entire process for all of you young people throughout this big state of Texas that are brave enough, courageous enough, and hardworking enough to prepare for these all-region and all-state auditions, the most important thing for me is that you have fun and learn more about the joys of playing jazz music. So I hope that some of these comments and these little demonstration videos are helpful for you. I really want it to be helpful for you because the music has just been so wonderful to me. It has brought so much positivity into my life. It's brought so much encouragement and excitement. It's really blessed my life. And I hope that it'll do the same for you. And yes, it can be challenging, but usually the things in life that are challenging are the things that we cherish the most when we achieve them. So no matter what the results of an audition are, if you work on this piece and if you study Sonny Payne and if you check out Count Basie's orchestra, you have already won the prize, because as great jazz pianist John Lewis said, the reward for playing jazz is playing jazz. The reward for working on audition pieces for all-region jazz and all-state jazz is that you get to have fun playing. And I do know that results matter, and I respect that. But at the same time, don't ever let it discourage you. If you're having fun and you don't get the results at an audition that you wanted, it does not mean that all of your work was worthless. You still got better. Hopefully you had fun, and it's a journey. Now that I've been doing this thing for a long time, I've been playing since I was a kid, and I've got quite a few years under my belt. It's been a slow climb, but every year I feel like I'm a tiny bit better, but I also recognize I'm nowhere close to where I hope to be when I grow up. So just keep keeping on, enjoy the journey. It is not a destination, it is a journey. So with that, I'm going to leave you with a couple other alternate takes of me playing through the same etude, and I hope you find those things helpful, and I wish you all the very best as you study this piece. And as always, if any of you have any questions, I would love to help any way I can. You can drop a comment on the video, or you can go to my website, stocktonhelbing.com. There's a contact button, and you can email me directly. I work really, really hard to try to answer any questions that I receive, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for hanging out with me. I hope that these comments were helpful, and I hope I see you in person. If you're ever somewhere where I'm playing or teaching, please come say hello. I would love to meet you. All right, everybody, wishing you all the best. Take care.